Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our weekly Torah learning of spreading more light and love into the world. We always like to start off with giving because how we give, that's how Hashem will give to us. Let's all give generously so Hashem will give us generously. I'm going to put a couple of coins in the tzedakah box, and we're going to do refuah shalema for Chana Yenta Rivka Bas Shendel, Chana Bela Bas Devora, Yosef Ben Devora Leah, Rafal Chaimer Ben Sima Chasha, Chana Leah Sarah Bas Pesha, Gittel, Devora Leah, Bas Yafa, Liba. We're also saying good news, only good news for Sarah Bas Ruchama Bluma Rivka. We also do this in merit for the safety of the Jewish people around the world and in Israel, and the hostages to return immediately. For the brave IDF soldiers who are serving in the army and protecting us and being a real heroes and a light with the help of Hashem. So I'm going to say two names, and I'm including everyone in the names, all the Chayalim and Chayalot. Rafal Ben Devora Leah, Hashem should keep him safe, and all of them. Shalom Dover Ben Basya Peril. I do this weekly in memory of my dear grandmother, Rivka Dina Bas Yosef Yehuda. I hope you're proud. My great uncle, who recently passed away this year. To save a life is saving a world, and he saved many. Chaim Dober Ben Betzalel, and my grandmother, who passed away recently, Bela Bas Betzalel. We're also dedicating this class in memory of a dear friend from this class. Her father's yahrzeit was on the 1st of Nisan. Chaim Ben Tzvi Halev. So I'm going to say that again. Chaim Ben Tzvi Halev. His yahrzeit was the 1st of Nisan. His neshama should have the highest aliyah, and he should return with the coming of Mashiach immediately. We're going to start off with Tehillim. We're dedicating this class tonight in honor of the Rebbe RaShaB, whose yahrzeit was today, the 2nd of Nisan. And our topic of today is how to be a lamplighter, which we're going to see in the video in the beginning. It talks all about spreading light and being a light. I'm going to say Kapitel Chak, Psalm 20. So join me from home for the hostages and for the safety of all the Jews around the world. Lamatseach Mizmar LeDavid Yancha Adonai B'yom Sarah. Yisagevcha Shem Elehei Akayv Yishlach Ezracha Mikadesh. Umitzian Yisadecha Yiskar Kol Min Chaisecha Ve'elascha Yidashna Selah. Yitain Lecha Chelvavevcha V'chol Atzascha Yimalei. Niranina B'shua Secha Uv'Shem Eloheinu Nidgal Yimalei Adonai Kol Mishalei Secha. Ata Yadaiti Ki Hashia Adonai Mishichai Yanehu Mishmei Kachai Bigurai Seisha Yiminai. Ela Varecha Ve'ela Vasusim Va'anachnu B'Shem Adonai Eloheinu Naskir. Hey Makaru V'Nafalu Va'anachnu Kamnu V'Nis Aidad. Adonai Hashia Hamelach Yanenu B'Yam Karenu. We're going to pull up the screen now of an incredible 8-minute film. So give us a moment while we pull it up.
Als fleckt herumgehen mit allein der Zähl der Baal Hagiule was Simcho da in Amerika in a Verbringen, was sie gewähr verbunden mit a Verbringen von Tammuz. Und hat Tibet erzählt, als sie gewähren beim Messibe, bei seinem Vater, beim Rebbe RaShaB. Hat einer von der Chassidim gefragt, was ist ein Chassid? Hat ihm der Rebbe RaShaB geantwortet, als ein Chassid, das ein Lantern steht. Eine Lanterne heißt das ein Panos, ein Fanar, was mit 10 Tonnen Gas gedreht zu machen, lichte Kehr bei Nacht. Amole gewinnt der Seder, als pflegt sein ungegräht Lampen oder Licht, in verschiedene Orten in Stadt und zu Vernacht zu gewesen ein Ish Hamemuna Ose. Gewesen ein Mensch, was sie gewesen auf Druf, dass sie gewesen sein Linien, als fleckt herumgehen mit alleinigen Stecken, warum die Fanaren, die Lanterne seien gestanden in der Heich, fleckt herumgehen mit alleinigen Stecken, was auf neben ist gewesen angezündet nach Feier, und fleckt der Miet zugehen zu den allen Lanternen und fleckt sie anzünden. Und der Menschen hat ihn gerufen, Lanternenstück. Und da sie gewähnt der Rentfer von der Reben von der Nossi auf der Scheile, wo sie sagt, Chossi, hat ihm geentfert, da sie ein Lanternenstück. Was geht herum mit der Weinigen Stecken und weiß, dass der Feier nicht seiner. Und was aber sein Ninja mit dem Feier soll gehen und anzünden die alle Lanternen. Hat der Scheel gefragt noch einmal, und wie ist eben die Lanterne steht in einer Wispe. Eine Wispe heißt das in einem Mock im Schomem in einem Midbar. Hat ihm der Rebbe nicht mal sehen geentfert, darf man echt gehen und anzünden die Lanterne, man soll sehen, dass das ist eine Wispe. Und hat Messiaim gewähnt, und die Wispe soll sich schämen für die Lanterne. Hat der Chossid weiter gefragt, und wie ist eben die Lanterne steht in der Jam. Hat ihm der Rebbe nicht mal sehen, auf der Ruf geentfert, demol darf man erst an die Levushim und reinspringen in den Jam und anzünden die Lanterne. Hat der Chossid weiter rübergefragt, das ist da kein Chossid, hat der Rebbe mir schon nicht mal sehen, vertracht und noch ein Trachten geantwortet, ja, das ist ein Chossid. Hat der Chossid weiter gesagt, ich sehe nicht kein Lanternes. Hat der Rebbe nicht mal sehen geantwortet, dass ich der Fahr war, du bist nicht kein Lanternenstück. Hat weiter gefragt, wie wird man ein Lanternenstück? Hat der Rebbe nicht mal sehen geantwortet, man darf anheben von sich, ein Reis gehen von Grobkeit und es waschen sich. Als man ist allein grob, setzt man Grobkeit. Als man wird edel, ist er demol, setzt man beim zweiten Nechet Edelkeit. Hat der Chossid nicht gewollt ablassen, hat weiter gefragt, sie mögen ihm nehmen für einen Gorgel. Sie für einen Gorgel heißt das für einen Halt. Dem der Rebbe nicht mal sehen, geentfert für einen Gorgel nicht, aber für einen Latz ja. Latz heißt das ein Leppel, der Vorn von dem Begit Hachitze. Hat kann der Sipur, wo der Rebbe, der Nossi, hat erzählt, was hat gehört von seinem Vater, dem Nossi, wie hat geentfert der Chossid. Was beklolus a Sipur, doch verstandig, a das, was man meint, Lanterne, das Ner, a Weihe, nicht mehr Sodo. Und auf Druf sagt man, als sie da a Tafkid, als sie da a seine Licht, was man eise Sibesche Tihie, seien sie noch nicht angezündet, und was ist der Ingen, was ist a Chossid, als darf gehen und anzünden Licht. Ist auf der Ruf, hat viele der Bewohner ist, hat der Lanternenstück weiß, hat der Feier nicht seine. Und das, was geht, jenem anzünden, ist der Ingen, was leicht noch, sie das schämen. Und Psylo, ist das nicht seine, das liegt bei jenem schön fertiger Heid. Und das, was jenem anzünden, nicht der Pirusch, als bringt ihm ein Ingen mit Bachutz, weckt in dem Muf oder der Ingen, wo sie da beim Zweiten von früher. Davon sind nach Zweiten nicht schon mehr, ist mehr nicht, was mir darf jene Meere sein, Megale sein, die Nekuda Sayades, was hat bei sich behalten, auf Aris nehmen, in Mina Keche, Lapel, danach wird es bei jenem Jatz mit Lichtig. Chafila, das Asami, was gefindt sich in der Wispe. Wo das Midbar Shome im Eretz asher leyoshe vodem sho. Kein Mitzis, was soll sein in Mina Nusha, viele der Poches bejeser, konnet es kommen und bleiben leben in der Midbar Shome. Und auch das bei ihm sei mal mit der Matze, was sehr viel Reik mit Kol Meile, als wir können ihm nicht gefunden, kein Linie von der Nusche ist nicht. Das hat aber der Sehne, am Ton geben, uns in sein nefischer Kies, wird sich anheben, Mistako sein und Missbene sein, sagt, das ist ein Wispe, sein Anhog ist ein Linie von der Midbar. Und unter Dämmert wird Sof kommen, wie Messiah, wie der Rebbe der Nossi hat Messiah gewähnt, an der Wispe wird sich im Schämen von der Lamtenne. Ist unter da, hebt on, der Hascholes Aveda, von der Jire Ktano, wird im Steigen, bis wann es Sof, wird die Wispe, weil Jose mit Bore keiden, die gar nicht. Und danach fragt man die zweite Scheile, was sie da in dem zweiten gesehen. Sie sagt, kein Mai im Teiro, ist bei ihm in Asamin Seder, was bei ihm ist Teiro nicht, was lernt hat. Und sie geblieben auf der Polizei, nur geworden wie ein Jammer, sind ganzen voll mit Teiro. Und auf Alpikein kann sich sein, wie sagt, in Novis Drebnossen, also kann sein Teiro und soll nicht sein, in ihre Schamai. Und auf der Ruf entfört man, als ich komme zu gehen mit seinen Lewuschen. Ich komme zu gehen und ein Masbir sein. Mit Lewusch von Meise, mit Lewusch von Dibu, mit Lewusch von Machschove, ist wie bald der Jener im Molle, wie Gottischen Teire wird ihm niedernehmen. Beschaß sich aber Reiston von sich und wird reinspringen in Jahren, wo das ist der Linie von Messias Nefesh. Und mit was wird ihm nehmen? Mit sein Ätzem an der Schome, mit sein Pnimis an der Schome, oder demut ist ein Ätzem, nimmt und der Gericht zum zweiten Ätzem, wo das Heche von Kaf nicht nur von Machschove, Dibur und und der Minien nach Havone war Soge. Beschaß kommen zu gehen, wird mit dem nehmen, mit der Ava Pnimis. Was sehen nicht, hat zu einem zweiten, und wie sagt in Tanien Perikla mit Besa, für was ist die Ava? Der Fall, was alle Wechert le Kolonne, der Fall, was alle Jiden, seien in derselbe Bonne Matem la Weile Kirche von demselben Babischen, der nimmt ihm durch der Likus, was sie da in Jenems nicht haben, und in seine Schome, hat demut wird uns in die Lanterne, was sie gefindet sich in Jan. Wo das ist der Linie von Achosid, wie der Rebbe Schmaseden hat das Masber gewählt.
Thank you for sharing. That was a beautiful video. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did of what it means to be a light. I'm now going to introduce to you our guest speaker that I'm so excited that she was able to commit to tonight, being that she had a lot going on. I attended something that I'll tell you in a moment. So I'm going to introduce to you tonight a friend, Dena Gorkin, the founder and principal of Benos Homish Academy Girls High School in Crown Heights. She's also the director of community education for Operation Surviva. She also consults on topics of parenting and education. She is a longtime resident of Crown Heights, mother, grandmother, friend, and mentor to many. I highly recommend her if you're looking for a mentor. But she invited me to her school's play last night, and it was so over the top. It really had to do with this whole topic that we're talking about tonight. Blown away to see the love that she has from her students. It's incredible. So tonight, Dena Gorkin is going to share with us how to be a lamplighter. Thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure, Chaya. For you, I, as you said, I had a very busy week. But for you, I couldn't say no, because you are a lamplighter. So how can I say no to a lamplighter? So as mentioned in the video of the Rebbe, today was the yard site of the Rebbe RaShaB. The Rebbe RaShaB was the fifth Rebbe in the Chabad dynasty of Rebbeim. And RaShaB is an acronym for Rabbi Shalom Dovber of Rabbi Shalom Dovber. And he was the the fifth Chabad Rebbe, and he had two very special qualities that are not often found within the same person. Very often we find a person who has a brilliant and deep analytical mind is very maybe two-dimensional, very in the books and very focused internally on his thoughts and very focused on his learning, but not necessarily does that person relate to people as well as somebody else might. But the Rebbe RaShaB had not only a brilliant analytical mind, and not simply brilliant analytical mind, but something the likes of which the Chabad movement had never seen before. He also had this intense outpouring of love for the Jewish people that he expressed, not just within him, but that he expressed in so many active ways, whether it was helping people to get matzahs during the war, or just sending his shluchim, his emissaries, to far-flung mountain areas to teach other Jews about Torah and mitzvahs. He just had this incredible love for the Jewish people. He wrote and delivered over 2,000 deep and intricate Hasidic discourses known as Maimarim throughout his lifetime. And despite his brilliance and erudition, he cared for even the simplest, most unlearned Jew and sought to do everything he could to bring education to the masses, not just to Torah scholars or would-be Torah scholars, but literally to everyone. So his father passed away when he was 21, and 11 years later, at the young age of 32, the Rebbe RaShaB took on the mantle of being leader of the Chabad movement. So he became the Rebbe. And in 1897, at the age of 37, he established a new type of yeshiva. And this yeshiva was unique in that besides for teaching Mishnah and Talmud like a typical yeshiva, the Rebbe RaShaB's yeshiva also taught Chassidus. And it was very, very important to the Rebbe RaShaB that his students got a very wholesome education. So he taught, as we said, the revealed parts of Torah, Mishnah, and Talmud, Chassidus, and also put a big stress on davening and on self-improvement and personal development. He named the yeshiva, interestingly, Tomchei Tamimim. Tomchei Tamimim literally means the supporters of the complete ones, or the supporters of the wholesome ones. And the idea behind this was that the Rebbe RaShaB really, really wanted his students to be complete, to be whole, and to really be knowledgeable in every aspect of Torah, whether it's the deep ideas of Kabbalah and Chassidus or the external parts of Torah. And the yeshiva got its name in an interesting way. It's told that 1 year after the yeshiva was established in Russia, in the town of Lubavitch, the Rebbe RaShaB was in Shul on Simchas Torah, and one of the prayers that we say on Simchas Torah goes according to the Hebrew alphabet. Like it's composed with each line being a letter, the next letter in the Hebrew alphabet. So the last verse in this prayer begins with two words that start with the letter Taf, Tomchei Tamimim. And when the congregation got to this last phrase in this prayer, the Rebbe RaShaB declared that this would be the name of the yeshiva, and that the students of the yeshiva would be called Tamimim, because they were learning all these aspects of Torah and working on themselves, on refining their character. So the yeshiva was in Lubavitch, but eventually had to move around to different places because of pogroms and war. Eventually, at some point, ended up in Poland. But despite this, there many, many great scholars emerged from Tomchei Tamimim, and they went on to move all around the world and establish other Tomchei Temimim schools. And as a matter of fact, I personally merited to attend one of these schools at the high school level. The high school that I went to was part of an elementary school called Tomchei Temimim. And I have to say that the Rebbe RaShaB's energy is still alive and well and lighting fires under the students that go to these yeshivas. It's also important to note that the Rebbe RaShaB took an active role in helping other Jews who were oppressed by the Tsarist government. And just one example is that in the year 1891, Jews were being expelled from Moscow. And the Rebbe RaShaB established a factory for knitting outside of Moscow because people had lost their jobs and they didn't have a livelihood. So he established this knitting factory and it gave jobs to thousands of Jews. And again, I mean, this is just, it sounds not like something you would expect a Rebbe to be doing. You would expect a Rebbe to be guiding his flock and helping them learn more and helping them, you know, when a situation comes along where someone has a personal problem. But the Rebbe RaShaB took on any communal struggle and strife. And believe me, there was plenty of that going on during those times. Because of the dangers in World War I, the Rebbe RaShaB ended up relocating to the town of Rostov for the last 5 years of his life. And eventually communism flourished and it became the Soviet Union, and much of Jewish life in Rostov disappeared. But you will be happy to know that, not to anyone's surprise, today there is a thriving Jewish community in Rostov with a dynamic Chabad Shliach at its helm. So the embers may have gone down low, but never were extinguished. When the Rebbe RaShaB passed away, he made a famous statement where he said, "I am going to heaven, but my writings I leave for you." And it happens to be that not all Hasidic Rebbes wrote down all of their works, but the Rebbe RaShaB was famous for writing down all of his works. So the hundreds and hundreds of manuscripts that he left were given to his son, who eventually published many of them. As you heard, so that's a little bit of background on the Rebbe RaShaB. And as you heard on the video, one of the statements for which the Rebbe RaShaB was famous is, "A chassid is a lamplighter." And he originally explained, before this long, beautiful story that the Rebbe told, he said, a lamplighter walks in the streets carrying a flame at the end of a pole. And he knows that the flame is not his, and he goes from lamp to lamp and lights them. Now, the idea of a lamplighter, according to the way the Rebbe RaShaB explained it, really consists of 4 steps. Step number 1 is self-awareness and humility, right? To work on myself, as the Rebbe mentioned, to work on myself, to know that I need to do this. And whatever my hangups are and my shortcomings are, it doesn't matter. I can just put those in a little box and come and revisit them at any other time. But I don't have to dwell on my shortcomings. All I have to know is, if I'm a lamplighter, then it's my job to light lamps. So it doesn't matter what my shortcomings are. And I need to work on them. And I also need to not let them get in my way. And that's the self-awareness and the humility to know that this is not my light. And if it's not my light, I don't have to be perfect in order to spread it. I just have to be committed to it. So that's the second step. It's the willingness to commit and share with others. If I'm a lamplighter, then it's my job, it's my responsibility to share that light and to go from place to place, bringing the light. And we're talking about this light. We're talking about the light of Torah and the light of enlightening people about Torah and mitzvos. Then the third step is being willing to put in extreme effort to light the lamps of others, no matter what obstacles may stand in our way. Just like the chassid asked, so what if the light is far out in the desert? You go far out in the desert. What if the light is under, what if the lamp is under the water? You go under the water with special equipment and you light that lamp. I mean, that sounds nearly impossible. The Rebbe RaShaB was saying, I don't care if it sounds nearly impossible. This is your job. Do it. And the fourth step is the patience to work consistently in that desert or whatever environment we find ourselves in until it flourishes with the light of Torah. So it's really, if we break it down, it's really a 4-step process. And as you know, there was no ambiguity there. It's the job of every single chassid and every Jew. Now, my experience in a school established on the principles of the Rebbe RaShaB was actually what literally led me to be a lamplighter. And I would say there were three pivotal moments in my life where I knew that this is what I needed to do. The first one, and you'll see a very interesting sort of theme, and almost like the stage was set long before I came around for these things to happen. So I'm going to leave one part of that for the very end, but I'll share other little snippets. So I'm taking you back. Pretend there's harp music and you know, blurry screen, and I'm taking you back to my early childhood where I'm 6 years old and I'm sitting in the class was called primer. It's basically, some people call it kindergarten, some people call it pre-1A. It's the grade before first grade where we're taught to read. Now, my teacher of Hebrew studies was a wonderful woman by the name of Hadassah Karlbach. Some of you may know her. And she actually, I learned this last week, that she actually did not want to teach. She needed to make parnasa, she needed to make a living, but she felt like she wasn't successful at teaching. And she was confiding in the Rebbetzin Chaim Mushka, the Rebbe's wife, that she's really not good at it and she really doesn't want to continue. And the Rebbetzin told her that she should continue and she will get better at it. And she taught, I don't know how many years, she taught me and all my siblings how to read Hebrew. And being in her class and watching and listening to her love of Torah and how she gave over the weekly parsha. And I still remember how she taught us about Megillas Rus, how she taught us that Rus was very modest and how she bent down to pick up the sheaves of wheat and the sheaves of barley in a very modest way. And I remember this like it was yesterday. I have a visual image of being in that classroom and Mrs. Karlbach just enveloping us in love and love of Torah. That was my first inspiration. And when I got to first grade, they used to ask us when we came into school at the beginning of every year, we had to write a paragraph about something, anything. And they would ask us to this beginning of the year and end of the year to see our progress. So I don't remember what I wrote at the beginning of the year, but I remember at the end of the year, my paragraph said, when I grow up, I want to be a teacher. Because I knew from Mrs. Karlbach, she lit a fire under me. This is what a lamplighter does, and she lit the lamp. When I was in junior high, I had another teacher that did the same thing, and she just literally lit a fire under me and made me realize what a good educator was and could do for a child. And then when I got to high school, I had another teacher, Rabbi Gorin Apr, who was a phenomenally brilliant chassid, who was the third person that really somehow made me feel like this was something that I could do. And by the time I got out of high school, I knew that I wanted to start a school. I didn't do it for many years. In the interim, I became a substance abuse prevention counselor. I taught special ed. I did a whole bunch of things along the way, but eventually that light had to be, I had to become that lamplighter that my school experiences prepared me to do. And I decided that I was going to create a school like the school that I went to in high school, which again was the high school of the Tamchei Tmim school. So I decided to create that kind of a school with the warmth and the love of learning, etc. And that's what I do every day. And I hire people who can exude that warmth and who can help young high school girls to grow to love learning, to love Torah, to love Yiddishkeit, and to be inspired to themselves be lamplighters. The part of the story that I didn't tell goes like this. Every time I tell the story, I have to debate how am I telling it, because like I have two different ways I tell it from the end or tell it from the beginning. So I think I'm going to tell it from the beginning. We all hear stories about, there was a couple and they couldn't have children and they wrote into the Rebbe and it was a miracle. So this is one of those stories. And I bless everyone here that they should have their miracle stories immediately, and whatever you need should be fulfilled in the wake of this auspicious day and in the miracle month of Nisan. So there's a couple, they're married a number of years, they did not have children. And they had gone from, doctor to doctor, specialist to specialist, and it was a while back. It was probably before IVF was happening. And they lived in North Carolina. And the husband's job changed and they moved to Brooklyn. When they moved to Brooklyn, the husband met a rabbi who became his chavrosa, and they started learning together. And this chavrosa happened to be a Chabadnik. So at one point, he started to tell this Chabadnik his woes, that they're married a number of years and they don't have children. And this chassid says, why don't you write into the Lubavitcher Rebbe? So the husband went home, spoke to his wife, and the wife's father was a very learned Jew and had connections to Chabad. So she spoke to her father and she said, do you think this is a good idea? And he said, yes. So they sat down and they wrote a letter to the Rebbe and they sent it in and they got an answer. Check your tefillin and mezuzahs to make sure everything is kosher. Because with tefillin and mezuzahs, we know that if there's even one mistake in a letter, or if there's a crack in the mezuzah, that means a letter is split, or if there's something written incorrectly in tefillin or mezuzahs, it can have a damaging effect spiritually, and the spiritual effects can affect a person physically. So they brought the tefillin and mezuzahs to a sofer, to a scribe, and sure enough, when they were checked, there were some issues, some things wrong with the tefillin and the mezuzahs. So those corrections were made, and lo and behold, within the year, a baby girl was born to this couple. Then the husband's job changed again, and they moved back to North Carolina. And shortly after that, within about 10 months, the woman realized that she's pregnant again. So she made an appointment to go back to one of the doctors that she had seen when she was going through all the fertility stuff, because she liked that doctor. She made an appointment to go see him. Excuse me. And because that doctor wasn't close to her home, her husband drove her. They took their baby, who was about 10 months old. They took the baby with them to the doctor's office. And the husband waited with the baby in the waiting room, and the wife went into the doctor's office and waited for the doctor. And her chart was on the doctor's desk. Now, nowadays, you go on your phone and you find your My Chart, and you can see every little comment that your doctor made about everything. You can see all your blood tests, and you can then Google everything and become nervous about everything that's going on in your blood work. But back in the day, there were no apps for your medical records. And so all the medical records were kept in a folder. And while the woman was waiting for the doctor, she was curious to see what was in her folder. So she turned the folder around and she started to read. And she had pages and pages of all her fertility issues and all the miscarriages and everything that had gone on. And then on the last page, it was scrawled in big letters, "This woman will never carry a full-term pregnancy." She quickly turned it back around and she ran out to the waiting room and said to her husband, come into the examining room with me and bring the baby. So by the time the doctor got in there, it was the woman and her husband and the baby. And the baby looked just like her. So there was no question that this was her baby. Like, you couldn't look at these two faces and say, oh, she managed to adopt a baby that looks just like her. So when the doctor came in and he looked at the woman and the baby, he was in shock. And he's looking from the woman to the baby. And he's like, I don't understand. I don't understand. This is your baby? You gave birth to this baby? She says, yes. And he says, but it's impossible. And the husband says, yes, you and all the other doctors said we couldn't have children, but a great rabbi in New York said that we could. And about 7 months later, the wife gave birth to me. And that's my story. And I first found out this story, I don't even remember how old I was, maybe 10 or 11 or so. And I was hearing like Rebbe stories about other people. And I said to my parents, no fair, I don't have any Rebbe stories. And my father said, you are a Rebbe story. And that is it. We don't even realize how much the Rebbe is looking out for us and how much he is connected to every single one of us. And just like I said, the Rebbe RaShaB was so careful and looking out for every single Jew. Our Rebbe is also there and looking out for us and making sure that we are where we need to be. And even when we are struggling and finding our struggles to be overwhelming, we know we have a Rebbe that's looking out for us. And I tell this story because it's so interesting to see how the Rebbe made sure that I was born so that I could be a lamplighter. And all these things happen along the way. The Rebbetzin told Mrs. Karlbach to be my teacher. And there was also a very interesting story how I got to this yeshiva Tomchei Tamimim. And every step of our way is guided by Hashem. And the Rebbe is there as our cheerleader, helping us all along the way. And I hope that even though right now we don't have the Rebbe in the same way as we did before Gimel Tammuz, the Rebbe's passing, I hope that everybody finds a way to connect with the Rebbe because he finds ways to connect with us. And the first Lubavitcher Rebbe, the Alter Rebbe, says in Tanya that anyone who follows a Rebbe, anyone who is a chassid, anyone who follows the teachings and the ways of a Rebbe has a special protection that comes from that Rebbe's Gan Eden. And that Gan Eden, when we learn the Rebbe's teachings, that his Gan Eden surrounds us and we have special merits. So don't be fooled by the fact that you can't see the Rebbe in 770 on a day-to-day basis. Don't let that fool you. A tzaddik, we are told, as is also quoted by the Alter Rebbe in Tanya, that a tzaddik after his passing is more alive in this world than when he was alive in this world, which sounds like a very paradoxical statement, but there's so much truth to it. Why? Because when a Rebbe is in this world, in this physical world, he's a tzaddik, but he's bound by the rules of time and space, right? No human being can escape the principles of how the physical world works. So he's bound by the limitations of time and space. But when a tzaddik passes away, he's no longer bound by those things. And if we only reach out and ask for his intervention, he finds ways to help us. So I will finish with one last story. Is that okay, Chaya?
Yeah, we also have a question after you're finished.
Oh, okay. So last I'm going to finish with is that I've been running my school now for 17 years. I think we were in our second year and things were really tough. And we didn't yet have a supporter base. We didn't have a lot of students and finances were just so difficult. And I didn't know how we were going to survive. And I think I could safely say I was a little depressed. And we don't have school on Friday. We have school Sunday through Thursday. We don't have school on Friday. It was Friday morning. I got up. I didn't even have the energy to get dressed. And I got back in bed, washed Negavasser, got back in bed. I said, I don't know. I don't know what I'm doing. So I took out my laptop and I decided to, they call it now doom scrolling, right? So I decided to doom scroll on COL Live, the Chabad website. And I came to an article that was written about an event, a dinner that happened in Long Island. And it was the Chabad house of the Paltiels, Rabbi and Mrs. Paltiel in, I forgot what city, in Long Island. And there was a video there. So I clicked on the video and there was a video of one of their board members or supporters, apparently a person of means, but a person who was not your typical Chabad person. He seemed like someone who lives in the community. Maybe he is or isn't observant. I don't know. But he was standing at the podium and he was talking about some near tragic incident that was happening with his business. And he was, doing quite well and he was about to lose everything. And he called Rabbi Paltiel and Rabbi Paltiel said, "We're going to the Rebbe, let's go." And he and this guy drove to the aisle and they went to daven. They went to daven by the Rebbe. And I don't remember the details, but somehow the whole thing turned around and the guy became even wealthier than before, and it was amazing. So he ends off his speech by saying, "Go to the Rebbe. You have problems? Go to the Rebbe." And I'm sitting there like this, like, oh, do I have problems? Okay, I'm going to the Rebbe. I hear you, mister. Turned off my computer. I called my assistant principal. I said, "We're going to the Rebbe." Get in the car. It's Friday. I'm supposed to be cooking for Shabbos. I'm going to the Rebbe. And we went and I poured my heart out and we came out of the area of the cemetery, we came into the tent area where, people are milling around and waiting to go in. And who do I see but Rabbi Paltiel, the guy who sent the other guy to the Rebbe. I don't know him from a hole in the wall, but I'm not shy. And I walk over to him and I say, "Hello, Rabbi Paltiel. You don't know me. My name is Dena Gorkin, and I'm here because of you." I think I freaked him out a little bit, but then I explained and I said, "Thank you for bringing me here. He then proceeded to give me advice about how to get my school in order. And one of the pieces of advice he gave me was get a board. You need a board. Don't think about money. You need to get a board. I went, I got a board. From that time on, our board helps us run the school. We were able to buy a building a couple of years later, and things took off from there. The Rebbe finds ways to help us. It's just incredible. Go to the Rebbe. And go to the Rebbe could mean write to the Rebbe, think about the Rebbe, open up a book of the Rebbe's letters, find a way to go to the Rebbe will find a way to go to you.
Wow, what a story. That's incredible.
Yeah.
I need to say, like, play on words. I myself, you know, when I'm in doubt, I always go to the Rebbe, and he always finds a way to answer me. You know, and sometimes it's timing, so it's pretty incredible. And I feel very lucky to know about your school. I just want to say, before we ask the question, Mrs. Dena Gorkin, she worked in Beis Rivka years ago, and I was a young girl, and she left such an impression on me. She wasn't my teacher, but I remember she like hooked up this program somehow, a cooking class for some girls, and I was chosen to go. And let me tell you, I mastered how to cut an onion like perfection from that class. And it was just, a person will never forget how someone makes them feel. And we bumped into each other a few years later. And yeah, and now we're good friends. So it's really.
And Chaya gave me my first donation for the school. I met her. I told her, I asked her how she is. I told her I'm opening a school in the fall. She said, wait right here. It was by her house. She ran up to her room and brought me her tzedakah box and gave me my first donation. I'll never forget that.
Now that you're reminding me, it was a piggy bank, like a shoe, and it was my bat mitzvah gift that I got. I gave away that shoe. I probably should have kept it.
Wow.
But in those days, the presents that we got was so exciting. So anything we got was so special. So I got this like shoe tzedakah box, which was awesome. But I don't even remember that story. So thanks for reminding me. But I want to just ask a really good question that came in, and then a question that came to mind for my viewers who don't necessarily have Hasidus in their life. So I'm going to ask this question first. How do you feel that Hasidus, if you're not, you know, you didn't grow up Chabad, how does it enhance your life?
I think that's a whole other talk, but I didn't grow up with Hasidus. My parents were religious. My parents had a connection to the Rebbe. My father would like share little things with us, but I didn't go to a Lubavitcher school, so I didn't learn Hasidus until I was in 11th grade in high school. And then I only started. But something inside of me knew there was more than what I was learning in Nigla, in just the, you know, the external parts of Torah. It's never too late to start learning Hasidus. People start learning in their adult lives. People start learning late in their adult lives. And all it takes is one good book and one good teacher. And a teacher means a lamplighter, just someone that you can speak to that can learn 2 or 3 lines of Hasidus with you for starters, and then slowly build up. And the teacher doesn't have to be someone you hire, can be a friend. There's some beautiful online phone chavrusa programs where they'll match you up with somebody who can teach you, and you can do it weekly or bi-weekly. Actually, my niece was just telling me about somebody that she connected with that happens to be a good friend and neighbor of my son who lives in Charlotte, North Carolina. All roads lead to North Carolina. That's how it goes. So my son eventually moved on shlichus to North Carolina. Like my niece who's from Philly has a weekly phone learning session with this lovely woman from North Carolina. And so you can find online, possibilities to learn Hasidus. But again, start with a good book. And there are many good books out there. One good book that I can tell you, it's an expensive book, but it's also beautiful. And it also gives a lot of background. It's called The Book of Jewish Knowledge, that was published recently by JLI, Jewish Learning Institute. I can actually show it to you because I have it on my shelf. I don't know if you can see it. There's a glare. And it's shiny silver. The Book of Jewish Knowledge by JLI. And it has, it has not, a lot of stuff on everything Jewish history. This is like an encyclopedia of everything Jewish. And it has introductions to Hasidic philosophy and the Hasidic movement and all that. That's one place to start. The graphics, all the fonts, everything were actually designed by my husband. So I'm very proud of that. But there are other good books. And if you walk into a Judaica store in Brooklyn, or if you call any Judaica store, you can ask about introductory books to Hasidus, but it's never too late to start learning.
Wow, great answer. I'm so glad that you connected to Hasidus because we have you now in Crown Heights, Brooklyn. That's where you live, and you make such a difference in so many people's lives. So we have a question that came in. You mentioned that you loved your school and teachers so much that inspired you to open your own school. Can you give us some insight on the type of school that you run and how you see your students being ignited the way you were?
Okay. So I believe that all education is about connection. You can teach a little more math or a little more English. You can teach, an extra verse of Chumash. But if your students don't feel connected to you, that knowledge stays out here. If they feel connected to you, the knowledge is absorbed by them. And not only do they love you, they love the knowledge. And if that knowledge leads to practice, then they will love that practice. And I don't know, I could tell you stories probably for 24 hours straight about connections that our teachers have made with our students that literally changed the course of their lives. One that comes to mind is we had a student from a very, very broken home. I'll spare you the details, but basically her mother wanted to send her to public school and she did not want to go to public school. And her best friend was coming to my school. So she came, but she came with a lot of emotional baggage. And the first year, she was kind of open to learning. The second year, she was kind of open to getting into trouble. And by trouble, I mean, not so much in school. She was a pretty good student, but out of school. And she did some things that might have gotten her kicked out of school in another school. But our approach is when a 14-year-old makes a mistake, our job is to guide them to better behavior, not to punish them for being 14. So I tell this to my students at the beginning of every school year. You are 14, 15, 16, 17. As such, your prefrontal cortex is not yet fully developed. So you're going to make mistakes. You're going to do impulsive things. You're not always going to think things through. And that's okay as long as you're willing to learn from your mistakes. So when I tell them this, that, I say now tonight, you're going to go home and, you're going to tell your parents how your day at school was. And then the next time you do something stupid and your parents are upset with you, sit them down and say, remember I told you, my first day of school, I learned such and such. Well, you see, I'm a teenager, and as such, my prefrontal cortex is not yet fully developed. And that's why I made this mistake. So what I need you to do is support me through this process. And there's always one girl in the class that goes, my parents will kill me if I say that. And there's always another girl that goes, I'm going to try that tonight, which makes me think you're already planning on doing something stupid today after school, but that's a whole other story. So our job with teenagers, or even with younger kids, is to just support them and love them and give them a good education at the same time, which means getting the best books and the best materials and teachers who really know how to give over the information. But at the top of it all, to love them. So that's it. We once had a guest come into our school to speak to the girls. And as he was leaving, I was walking him to the door and he said, your students seem so happy. What's your secret? I said, we love them. And he said, huh, that's new. But it's not new. It's old. The Rebbe RaShaB, the Baal Shem Tov, all the Hasidic masters loved their students, loved them, and showed them love to each one in the way they needed it to be shown. And that's underlying everything. That is the philosophy of our school. And then, of course, there's a lot of individualization for their learning. And if a student, we have leveled learning for some of the subjects that are skill-based. And if a student needs more of something or less of something, we work to provide it. And everybody feels seen and heard.
I love that. I'm lucky to have like Mr. Bashalis with girls that I taught when they were 2, and now they bring their friends. So we do it monthly in my house, and they keep wanting to come back. And I'm like, some days I'm like, I try to prepare as much as I can. Sometimes I bring in what we hear from the class, but I realize, like you said, what girls need today is connection, and they feel that I love them and they just want to come back. I put on the most delicious foods on the table, and and they just keep coming back. And today they won't come if they're not loved, and they won't want to go to school, and they'll just tune you out. And I hear it from so many girls, how they feel that they're unheard by their teachers, or they feel that there's no connection, or they feel that their teachers are not authentic. And the girls today are very, very smart. They're much smarter than the past generations, and they get it, and they see everything, and they pick up on everything. And they're watching us, and they're watching, the teachers. And it was such an important, lesson that I learned. Like I teach 2-year-olds, and, we have to help them create their foundation for life, and we can make them or break them. And we want to be on the side of history of making them and really making a difference, like your teachers did for you in your life. And by them teaching you all those incredible lessons, and showed you how you're meant to feel as a teacher to student, you followed suit. And it's so, so incredible. So I hope every educator listening to this really, besides like academics, yes, it's important, but the most important thing is for the girls today to feel loved and secure, and to feel heard, and, not to feel judged. And this is coming from the girls. Like, they're telling me what they feel, and they feel safe coming to me because I'm not, judging them. And I tell them straight up, I'm like, guys, I'm not perfect. I don't. And they all beg me. They're like, could you come teach for us? Could you come teach for us? I said, let's keep it like this because it's nice. But yeah, it's so incredible. Someone asked what happened to that girl who attended your school today. Like, you keep in touch with your...
Yep. She graduated. She went to seminary. She's now working in a school, teaching. So...
Wow, I just got the chills. That was amazing. And if maybe you have time to share one more story, because I know
I actually, my sister has a birthday Zoom for bringing right now. So
okay, so you go. We'll
I'll be
please
happy to come back.
we'll please God get you again. So sorry for putting you on the spot, but we're very lucky that we got to have you tonight. And bless, and thank you for doing it in your busy schedule.
Pleasure.
She is very busy, but I just want to say, I just found out that she counsels like moms, and is a consultant. So if you need to connect, if anyone's listening to this, reach out, because Dina is just sunshine and light, and she'll bring more light to your life. And I'm getting a bunch of messages that you're so loved, and thank you for all your work that you did with their daughters, and coming in right now. So thank you so much, Dina, for being part of this, and really bringing more light into the world and following in the Rebbeim's footsteps, because that's what they want. They paved the way. They worked so hard, sweat and tears. They gave their life to us.
Yeah.
And the gift that we can give them back is to follow in their ways of what they gave us. And you should just always be blessed.
Same to you. Same to you. All the brachas to you for all the holy work that you're doing. And I want to wish everybody a kosher and freilich Pesach. We should see the end of this galus. We should have the ultimate redemption in the month of redemption.
Amen to that. And someone just asked, so maybe you could just say it for the recording, because we have sometimes like over 1,000 people that watch the recording, and I don't know who. I don't always get feedback. We love feedback. So give us feedback if you like this class. Someone asked how they can reach you. Do you have an email that you're comfortable?
I actually have a manager now, because things got a little too hectic. I can give you her number and you can post it. Is that okay?
Okay. That's okay.
All right. Her name is Sarah.
Okay.
And her number is 404-805-9770.
Okay. Thank you. That was a question that came in from the viewers. I'm not, I mean, I do very much believe in you, and I really recommend, if someone needs a little bit of extra help in their life, to reach out, but that came from someone on the class. So just letting you know.
Right.
So thank you so much, Dina, for being here, and happy birthday for your sister. And you're definitely a light, and you're definitely a lamplighter. Before we conclude, I'm just going to give a little roll call. So
right back at you. I'm gonna check out. Take care.
Thank you. Before we conclude, we're going to do a roll call and just tell everyone where everyone's from. So tonight we have with us Queens, Long Beach, California, Brooklyn Heights, Australia, Port Washington, Cedarhurst, Charlotte, North Carolina, Far Rockaway, Crown Heights, Toronto, Canada, Flatbush, Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, Borough Park. We have Minnesota, and I'm sure many more places. Thank you everyone for tuning in. I'm going to just conclude with a beautiful quote that I read today from the Rebbe RaShaB, and I hope you'll enjoy it as much as I do. So give me a moment while I get my notes. So I wanted to write word for word. Okay, this is from the Rebbe RaShaB. Life is a revolving wheel. A successful person who sits on top of the wheel and laughs is a fool. Why laugh? It is a revolving wheel after all. A pauper on the bottom of the wheel who weeps is also a fool. The only substance of lasting value is a favor done for another and learning Torah. These endure and produce fruit that in turn produce more fruit. This was told by Reb Shalom Dober of Lubavitch, known as the RaShaB, whose yahrzeit is the 2nd of Nisan, which was today. So thank you everyone for joining. I'm just going to give a quick shout out and thank yous. I want to thank our incredible speaker tonight, Dena Gorkin, who is an inspiration. I watched the play the other night of her school, and the way her students love her is just beyond. So I just wanted to give her a shout out and say thank you for coming on and sharing this topic, which I feel was definitely a merit to you because you follow in the Rebbe RaShaB's footsteps. I want to say thank you to Shandy Jacobson, my mentor and mashpia for the class. I want to thank all the ambassadors of the class who share the classes on their chats and their WhatsApps. If you'd like to become an ambassador, I share my merits with you. Please reach out to me and I will make that happen. I want to thank everyone for tuning in. And I want to thank Hashem and the Rebbe for giving me this opportunity weekly and helping and guide me for the right topics and speakers. And I also would like to thank my dear husband who really helps me on the tech and the background work of this class. So I'm so thankful to his time because my passion is important to him. So I'm very grateful to that. So thank you everyone for tuning in and wishing you happy cleaning. And it should be a very, easy process. And I'm looking forward to seeing you all next week. Have a wonderful night.